The sky above the Argonne forest was a watercolor of death. It was a soft, hazy morning in September 1918, with wisps of cloud clinging to the skeletal trees below like ghostly bandages. But the peace was a lie. From the German side of the lines, 3 monstrous, sausage-shaped shadows hung in the air, observation balloons. On the ground, nestled between shattered barns and shell craters, a lone Nieuport 28 sputtered to life. Its pilot, Captain Silas Crow, slapped the fuselage of his plane like it was a nervous horse. At 35, he was an old man in a young man's war, his face a roadmap of laugh lines now pressed into the service of grim determination. "Easy, petite reine, easy," he murmured, the name, Little Queen, a relic from his barnstorming days when this very plane wowed crowds at county fairs. Now, she was a weapon. His mechanic, a kid from Chicago named Danny, yelled over the rotary engine's roar. "She's running rich, Doc. You watch those carbs, or she'll quit on you." Doc just winked, a flash of the showman he used to be. "She never lets me down, kid. Unlike my ex-wife." He adjusted the silk scarf around his neck, a gaudy, non-regulation splash of color. It was a statement. In a war of uniforms, Silas Crow insisted on being an individual. His mission, however, was the deadliest assignment on the Western Front, balloon busting. The French called it le sport de la mort, the sport of death. And today, Doc was going hunting. The balloon, or sausage as the pilots called it, was the all-seeing eye of the enemy. From its basket, observers with powerful glasses could direct artillery fire with pinpoint accuracy, turning entire battalions into pink mist. Destroying one was like poking a stick into a hornet's nest. They were heavily defended by anti-aircraft guns on the ground, Archie, and protected by patrols of elite German fighter planes. Doc's Nieuport clawed its way into the cool air. He didn't climb for altitude, not yet. He stayed low, using the scarred landscape of the Argonne as cover, the mist from the Meuse River clinging to his wings. His heart wasn't pounding with fear, but with a strange, focused anticipation. This was the moment, the calm before the storm. He could smell the castor oil from the engine, a familiar, almost comforting scent. He thought of the boys in the trenches, knee-deep in mud and rats, waiting for the next shell to land. They couldn't see the man up here in the clean, cold air, fighting for them. He was their avenging angel, a lone wolf in a world of pack tactics. His Congressional Medal of Honor was tucked away in a footlocker back at the aerodrome. It was a nice piece of tin, but it didn't stop shrapnel. Only skill and a whole lot of luck did that. He reached his starting point, a bend in the river he used as a marker. Now, he pulled back on the stick and the Nieuport soared upwards, the wind whistling a sharper tune in the wires. The world fell away, the trenches becoming nothing more than ugly scars on the earth. He was in the sunlit kingdom now, the domain of the knights of the air. And there they were, the 3 Drachen balloons, hanging in a lazy line, their silver skins glinting in the morning sun. They looked almost peaceful. Doc knew better. He scanned the sky above them. Nothing. Too quiet. The German fighters, the Justice, were late. Or they were hiding, waiting for some foolish Allied pilot to take the bait. He wouldn't give them the chance. His plan was this slashing attack. Come in fast, low, and from an unexpected angle. He pushed the stick forward, nosing the Nieuport into a shallow dive. The wind scream became a shriek. He armed his twin Vickers machine guns, the mechanical clack-clack a satisfying sound. He was close now. He could see the tiny basket beneath the first balloon, the 2 German observers inside, probably sipping coffee, completely unaware. A black puff of smoke exploded to his right. Then another, closer this time. Archie. The ground gunners had spotted him. The air around him began to dance with flak, the pop-pop-bang a terrifying percussion. He jinked the Nieuport left, then right, flying not in a straight line but a chaotic, unpredictable dance. A piece of shrapnel pinged off a wing strut. He ignored it, his eyes locked on the first balloon. He was almost in range. 800 yards. 500. He could see the observers now, pointing frantically. One of them scrambled for a parachute. They knew the balloon buster was here. At 300 yards, he squeezed the trigger. A short, precise burst. Tracers lanced out, but they weren't aiming for the basket. They were aiming for the balloon itself, filled with highly flammable hydrogen. Nothing happened. The bullets ripped through the fabric, but the gas didn't ignite. It was a bustier's worst nightmare, dud ammunition. He cursed, pulling up hard to avoid colliding with the monstrous thing. He had one pass, one chance. He'd have to get closer. Dangerously close, he swung the Newport around in a tight, gut-wrenching turn, the G-forces pressing him hard into his seat. The Archie fire was intensifying, the sky a filthy quilt of black smoke. He ignored it all, his world shrinking to the second balloon in the line. This time, there would be no mistake. He dove again, a falcon stooping on its prey. He didn't fire. He held his breath, holding the trembling nose of his plane steady. He could see the stitching on the balloon's skin. He could see the terrified white face of the observer, who had given up on his parachute and was just staring at the oncoming plane. 200 yards. 100. The heat from the Archie bursts was warming his face. At 50 yards, point-blank range, he fired. A long, sustained burst. A brilliant, silent flash of orange and red blossomed before him, so bright it seared his vision. A split second later, the concussion hit him, a physical wall of hot air that slammed into the Newport, tossing it sideways like a toy. He fought the controls, the world a spinning blur of fire and sky. He had done it. The first balloon was an inferno, a dying sun falling to earth. But as he struggled to right his plane, a shadow fell over him. He looked up. Silhouetted against the sun, sleek and predatory, were three Fokker WWIs. The Hornets were here, and they were led by the man they called the Bloody Baron. The world was a dizzying carousel of fire and blue sky. Doc wrestled with the stick, his muscles straining as the shockwave from the exploding balloon tried to tear the wings off his Newport. For a heart-stopping second, he was inverted, staring down at the burning wreckage of the Drachen as it fell in a graceful, terrible arc towards the forest. Then his little fighter righted itself with a shudder, and the real danger came into focus. The three Fokker WWIs. They were the best fighter planes Germany had, flown by the best pilots. And they had the ultimate advantage, altitude and a surprised enemy. The lead plane, painted a menacing blood red from propeller to tail, was already nosing down towards him. The Bloody Baron. Doc had heard the stories. A Prussian aristocrat with 20 confirmed kills, who was said to paint a tiny white cross on his strut for every plane he shot down. There was no time for fear, only action. Instinct, honed over hundreds of barnstorming shows and dozens of dogfights, took over. He shoved the stick forward and jammed the rudder, putting the Newport into a spiraling dive towards the safety of the alley the name pilots gave to the low-altitude chaos over the trenches. It was a desperate move. Archie still peppered the air, and now he had to dodge friendly and enemy ground fire alike. Tracers, glowing green, zipped past his cockpit. The Baron was on him, a predator with teeth bared. Doc could almost feel the German's cold, calculating eyes locked onto his back. He twisted in his seat, a risky glance over his shoulder. The other two Fokkers were peeling off, one to each side, trying to flank him. They were hurting him, like wolves cutting a lone caribou from the herd. He leveled out just above the treetops, the Newport's wheels nearly skimming the splintered pines. The roar of his engine was joined by the sporadic pop of small arms fire from the trenches below. He saw faces, pale ovals looking up, both German and American, their war momentarily forgotten for the spectacle unfolding above them. The red Fokker matched his move, staying on his tail. The other two hung back, higher up, watching. This was personal. The Baron wanted the balloon buster for himself. A duel. A classic joust in the sky. Doc's mind raced. The Newport was nimble, a quick turner, but the Fokker D.7 could outclimb and outdive it. It was a better plane. He was flying against a better pilot. His only advantage was recklessness. He pulled back on the stick, climbing sharply. It was a feint. The Baron took the bait, climbing steeper to cut him off. But Doc chopped his throttle, kicked the rudder, and stomped on the left brake. The Newport shuddered violently and spun into a deliberate, flat stall turn. For a moment, he was hanging motionless, staring directly at the oncoming red Fokker. He saw the Baron's goggled face, a mask of surprise. Doc gave a jaunty, two-fingered salute. Then he dropped the nose and dove again, passing so close underneath the German that the turbulence rocked both planes. He heard the rattle of the Baron's twin Spondaus, but the shots were wild, hurried. He'd gotten inside the German's decision-making loop. For the first time, He had the initiative, but it was short-lived. The two wingmen, seeing their leader embarrassed, decided the game was over. They dove together, a pincer movement designed to trap him. Tracers streamed from both sides, creating a lethal crossfire. Doc felt bullets rip through the fabric of his lower left wing. Another shattered his windscreen, plexiglass shards stinging his cheeks. The cold wind whipped through the cockpit, tearing at his scarf. He was a rat in a corner. Climb, and the Baron was there. Turn, and a wingman was waiting. Dive, and he'd fly into the deck. A strange calm settled over him. This was it. This was how it ended. He thought of the medal in his footlocker, the fancy speech from the general. He thought of Danny, his mechanic, waiting back at the aerodrome. He hoped the kid wouldn't blame himself. Then, a new sound. A familiar, throaty roar from high above. A flight of 3 SPAD-13 fighters, their distinctive squared-off wings cutting through the sky like avenging angels. The cavalry had arrived. His own squadron, led by his wingman, a young, hot-headed lieutenant from Texas named Jack Ace McCullough, had seen the balloon go up and come looking for him. "Look alive, Doc. We heard you were having a party." Ace's voice crackled through the primitive radio, faint but glorious. The sky instantly dissolved into a whirling, chaotic melee, a dogfight. The neat formations shattered into a dozen individual duels. The two Fokker wingmen broke off their attack on Doc to engage the new threat. That left him, once again, with the Baron. The Prussian had used the distraction to regain altitude. He was above Doc again, but the look of cold calculation was gone, replaced by something hotter. Anger. Humiliation. Doc had made him look foolish in front of his men. This was no longer just about duty. It was personal. The Baron came down in a screaming, near-vertical dive. Doc turned to meet him head-on. A classic, deadly game of chicken. The two planes raced towards each other, engines screaming, guns silent until the last possible moment. In his mind's eye, Doc wasn't in a war. He was back in Nebraska, flying under a railroad trestle on a dare, the thrill of cheating death coursing through his veins. He smiled. At the last second, as the red Fokker filled his entire vision, he rolled the Newport onto its back and pulled through. An Immelman turn. He felt the thump-thump-thump of the Baron's guns, but he was already climbing, inverted, and now rolling out right side up, coming out behind and above the German. He'd reversed their positions. He had the shot. A clean, no-deflection shot at the Fokker's vulnerable back. His thumb hovered over the firing button. He saw the black crosses on the wings, clear as day. He saw the Baron frantically looking over his shoulder, knowing he was dead to rights. And Doc hesitated. It was just a fraction of a second. A memory flashed. A German pilot he'd shot down 2 weeks ago, his plane spiraling into a field. Doc had flown low to sea, and he'd seen the man crawl from the wreckage, his flying suit on fire, waving one arm in a pathetic, desperate salute before collapsing. He wasn't a Baron. He was just a boy. That moment of mercy, of humanity, cost him. The Baron, a pilot of supreme skill, used that microsecond of respite. He kicked his Fokker into a vicious skid, a move that should have ripped his wings off and sliced away to the left. Doc's burst of fire, when it finally came, tore through empty air. The red Fokker dove away, joining his two wingmen who were already disengaging from the fight with the Spads. The hunt was over. The Baron lived to fight another day. Doc leveled out, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was drenched in sweat, his hands trembling. He had survived, but as he watched the 3 German planes disappear into the haze, he knew with a cold certainty that this wasn't over. He had made an enemy today, not of a nation, but of a man. The flight back to the aerodrome was a quiet, trembling affair. The wind howling through his shattered windscreen was a constant, chilling reminder of how close he'd come. He could still see the Baron's face, the shift from surprise to cold fury. He could still feel the ghost of his own thumb, refusing to press the trigger. What was wrong with him? In this war, hesitation was a death sentence, and mercy was a luxury no one could afford. As the familiar, muddy field of the 94th Aero Squadron came into view, he saw the usual scene. Mechanics tinkering, a few pilots lounging in wicker chairs, the smell of damp earth and castor oil. But as he lined up his final approach, he saw something else. The entire squadron seemed to be on the field, standing in a loose crowd. For a heart-sinking moment, he thought they were mourning someone. Had he spotted one of the others? He bumped to a rough landing, the damaged Newport groaning in protest. He cut the engine, and in the sudden, ringing silence, the sound that greeted him was applause. They were cheering. Danny was sprinting towards the plane, his face split by a massive grin. "You did it, Doc. You got the balloon." The infantry saw the whole thing. "They're calling you a hero," the kid yelled, grabbing the wing to steady the plane as Doc clumsily climbed out. Doc just shook his head, pulling off his leather helmet. His hair was matted with sweat. "The Baron got away," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "I had him, Danny. I had him right in my sights." Danny's smile didn't fade. "So what? You're alive, and you blinded the Boche for a day. That's what matters." He was already inspecting the bullet holes in the wing, whistling. "Ooh, she's a mess. But she brought you home. That's my girl." Later, in the makeshift officer's mess, a drafty tent with a plank of wood for a bar, the mood was celebratory. Ace McCullough slapped Doc on the back, sloshing cheap French wine onto both their tunics. "I tell you what, boys," the look on that red devil's face when Doc here stalled right in front of him. "I thought I was seeing things." He roared with laughter. "You saluted him? Doc, you're colder than a well-digger's backside." Doc forced a smile, nursing his own drink. The warmth of the alcohol couldn't penetrate the cold knot in his stomach. He was surrounded by boys, most of them 10 years his junior. They saw the war as a grand, terrifying adventure. They talked of Huns and Boche, faceless enemies. They celebrated every kill, painting little swastikas or German crosses on the sides of their planes. Doc had none. His Newport was as bare as the day it left the factory. "What's the matter, Crow?" The voice was sharp, cutting through the boisterous noise. It was Major Thorne, their squadron commander, a stern, by-the-book career officer who tolerated Doc's unorthodox methods only because they got results. "McCullough says you had a clear shot at the Bloody Baron. That's a significant scalp to leave on the ground." All eyes turned to him. The tent grew quiet. Doc took a slow sip of his wine. "My gun's jammed, sir," he lied smoothly. "Lucky for me. Ace and the boys showed up when they did." Thorne's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe it for a second. He'd seen the combat report, the description of the point-blank balloon kill. A man whose gun's jammed didn't make that shot. "See that they're properly serviced," he said coldly. "That lone wolf act of yours is a fine piece of theater, Captain, but this is a team war. We can't afford sentiment." That night, sleep wouldn't come. Lying in his cot, every time he closed his eyes, he was back in that moment. The crosshairs on the red fuselage. The decision not to fire. It wasn't mercy, he told himself. It was what? Professional courtesy? Respect for a fellow pilot? That was a lie, too. The truth was uglier, more personal. He got up, pulled on his boots, and walked out into the night. The aerodrome was quiet, bathed in silvery moonlight. He walked past the shadowy hulks of the Spads and Newports, looking like sleeping dragons. He stopped in front of his own plane, Petite Reine. In the dark, the bullet holes were invisible. She looked whole. He rested a hand on her cold, fabric-covered fuselage. "What's happening to me, old girl?" he whispered. In his barnstorming days, fear was a spice that made the thrill taste better. Here, it was a poison seeping into his bones. He was becoming a ghost in his own life, haunted by the men he'd killed and haunted even more by the one he'd let live. He thought of the Baron. Was he lying awake too, staring at the ceiling of his own chateau, plotting his revenge? Or was he already asleep, untroubled, having already forgotten the face of the American who'd bested him? The not knowing was its own special kind of torture. He had created a rival, an obsession. The war was no longer a fight against an army. It was a personal duel stretched across the sky. The next morning, a thick, soupy fog blanketed the Argonne, grounding all flights. It was a reprieve. After a fitful few hours of sleep, Doc found himself in the squadron's makeshift library, a small room in a surviving farmhouse with a few dog-eared books. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a distraction from the inside of his own head. He pulled a thin, leather-bound volume of poetry from a shelf. It fell open to a well-worn page. A line was underlined in faint pencil. "I am the enemy you killed, my friend." The words hit him with the force of a physical blow. He sank into a chair, the book trembling in his hands. It was from a poem by Wilfred Owen, a British soldier. He read the lines around it, about the strange, intimate bond forged between two men trying to murder each other. It spoke of a shared suffering, a brotherhood of the damned. Is that what he felt? A twisted sense of friendship with the Baron? No, it was simpler and more terrifying. He saw in the Baron a reflection of himself. A man alone in the clouds, separated from the mud and misery below, playing a high-stakes game with his own life. To kill him would be to kill a part of himself, to admit that the game was just brutal, senseless slaughter. He slammed the book shut. This was madness. He was a soldier. His job was to kill the enemy. He had to get a grip. He stood up, his decision made. The next time he saw the red Fokker, there would be no hesitation. He would end it. The fog burned off by midday, and with it came new orders. Intelligence had spotted 2 new observation balloons being inflated behind a heavily fortified ridge known as the Serpent's Back. They were critical for an upcoming German counterattack. They had to go. The mission was assigned to the best balloon buster in the Allied forces, Captain Silas Crow. As he walked towards the flight line, Danny was waiting for him, a grim look on his young face. Petite Reine was patched up, her engine purring, but lashed to her struts were something new. For specially designed air-to-air rockets, crude but devastating. The Major's orders, Danny said quietly. No more getting in close. You pop them from 1,000 yards with these, then run like hell. Doc ran a hand over the cold, finned steel of a rocket. It was a coward's weapon, an impersonal, long-distance kill. It took the sport out of it. It took the face-to-face out of it. It was exactly what he needed. Good, Doc said, his voice a low rasp. He climbed into the cockpit, his movements stiff. He didn't look at Danny. He didn't look at the other pilots who had gathered to see him off. He stared straight ahead, at the horizon where the Serpent's Back waited. He was going back into the hornet's nest. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the Bloody Baron would be waiting for him. This time, there would be no games. No hesitation. It would end with one of them in a ball of fire on the ground. He just prayed it wouldn't be him. The air was crystal clear, the kind of perfect visibility that gunners prayed for and pilots dreaded. As Doc climbed away from the aerodrome, the 4 rockets on his Newport felt like anvils strapped to his wings, making the usually nimble plane feel sluggish and heavy. He missed the familiar, clean lines of Petite Reine. Now she felt like a delivery truck, a mule carrying death. The plan was simple, brutal, and terrifying. He wouldn't be flying his usual low, sneaky route. To use the rockets effectively, he needed altitude and a straight, stable run. He would be a slow, predictable target, a flying bullseye for every German gunner from here to the Rhine. Major Thorne had called it a tactical innovation. Doc called it a suicide run with extra steps. He climbed to 10,000 feet, the air growing thin and bitterly cold. Below, the Argonne forest was a rumpled green blanket, the trenches a network of ugly, brown scars. And there, in the distance, lay the Serpent's Back. It was a name the infantry had given it, a long, razor-backed ridge that dominated the landscape. On its reverse slope, hidden from direct Allied artillery, the 2 new German observation balloons were being prepared. He could just see their tops, 2 tiny, silver specks peeking over the ridge like curious, malevolent eyes. His own eyes constantly scanned the empty blue dome above him. The Baron was out here. He could feel it. This was too juicy a target. They were dangling the bait, and they knew the balloon buster would come. The whole flight felt like walking down a quiet street, knowing a sniper was on a rooftop, his crosshairs already on your chest. He reached his starting point, a few miles west of the ridge. He took a deep breath, the oxygen thin in his lungs. This was it. No fancy maneuvers, no tricks, just a straight charge. He pushed the nose down, beginning his attack dive. The wind scream began again, a high-pitched whistle that was the soundtrack to his mortality. Almost immediately, the sky around him came alive. Not with the black puffs of Archie, but with something new and more terrifying, quick, sharp flashes of white. They were using flak guns, firing shells that exploded into a cloud of deadly steel splinters. The Germans had anticipated a high-altitude attack. They'd moved their best guns. A shell burst so close to his right that the Newport was thrown violently sideways. Shrapnel peppered the wing, ripping new holes in the fabric. He fought the controls, his knuckles white on the stick. He was still miles from the rocket's effective range. This was a shooting gallery, and he was the only duck. Then he saw them. 3 specks, diving out of the sun. The Jasta, and leading them, a blot of blood red against the brilliant blue. The Baron. They had been waiting up there, painted by the sun, invisible until now. They had the ultimate advantage. Doc was low on energy from the dive, heavy with the rockets, and already dodging a hailstorm of ground fire. The trap was sprung perfectly. The Baron didn't engage immediately. He was a master tactician. He led his two wingmen in a wide, circling movement, cutting off Doc's escape route back to the Allied lines. They were hurting him again, but this time, they were hurting him deeper into the kill zone, towards the concentrated flak over the Serpent's back. Doc's mind raced, options flashing and dying like faulty light bulbs. Climb? He'd be a sitting duck for the diving Fokkers. Turn and fight? The rockets made him too slow to dogfight. His only hope was to complete the mission. If he was going to die, he was taking those balloons with him. He ignored the Fokkers. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done, flying straight and level while knowing death was diving onto his tail. He focused on the first balloon, which was now being frantically winched down by its ground crew. He was almost in range. 8,000 yards. 5,000. Tracers streamed past his cockpit. One of the wingmen was making a testing pass. A bullet smashed his altimeter, glass and gears exploding across the cockpit. Another tore through his map case. He was flying a disintegrating coffin. He jinked slightly, just enough to throw off the aim, but he held his course. The balloon was growing larger in his vision. 3,000 yards. He could hear the roar of the Baron's engine now, closing in from behind. He was seconds away from being shredded by the German Spandaus. This was it. Now or never. He squeezed the trigger for the rockets. Nothing happened. A cold, absolute terror seized him. A wiring fault. A dud. Danny's worried face flashed in his mind. She's running rich, Doc. Had the shrapnel from the flak severed the cables? He slammed his fist on the instrument panel in a burst of pure, frantic rage. And then, a miracle. A shudder ran through the plane as, one after another, 2 of the 4 rockets ignited and shot forward on trails of fiery smoke. They wobbled, unstable, but they flew true. He watched, his heart in his throat, as the 2 projectiles streaked towards the balloon. The first sailed harmlessly past, missing by feet. The second flew straight into the heart of the giant gas bag. The explosion was different from his gunfire kills. It wasn't a quick, bright flash. It was a massive, rolling fireball that bloomed outwards in slow, terrible majesty, swallowing the balloon, the basket, the winch truck, and the men on the ground in an instant. The concussion wave hit him like a physical punch, but he was already throwing his plane into a violent, evasive turn. The sudden, unexpected explosion had its intended effect. The Baron, who was lining up his killing shot, was forced to break off abruptly as the wall of superheated air and debris expanded towards him. The other German pilots scattered in confusion. It was the tiny window Doc needed. He didn't try to engage. He shoved the throttle to the firewall and dove for the deck, jettisoning the 2 dead rockets from his wings to lighten the load. The Newport, freed from the extra weight, surged forward. He flew at treetop level, weaving through the valleys, using the landscape as his shield. He could hear the angry snarl of the Fokker's engines above him, but they couldn't get a clear shot. He was a mouse scurrying through a field, and the Hawks were circling, frustrated. He didn't look back. He didn't dare. He focused on the lines ahead, on the safety of his own territory. He had done it. He had destroyed the balloon, humiliated the Baron a second time, and cheated death yet again. But as he crossed back over the Allied trenches, seeing the tiny, waving figures of the infantry below, he felt no triumph. Only a hollow, gnawing emptiness. The face that haunted him now wasn't the Baron's. It was the face of the German ground crew he never saw, vaporized in the fireball he had created from a mile away. He had won the duel in the sky, but he was losing the war inside his own soul. The celebration for his return was more subdued this time. The ground crews and his fellow pilots had seen the colossal plume of black smoke rising from the Serpent's back, a grim beacon marking his success. But they had also seen the condition of his plane. Petite Reine was a wreck. Her wings were a sieve, her fuselage scarred by shrapnel and bullets, her cockpit a shattered mess. She looked less like a returning hero and more like a ghost that had stumbled home. Danny didn't whoop or cheer. He just stared at the plane, his face pale, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. As Doc cut the engine and clumsily climbed out, His body trembling with leftover adrenaline and fatigue, the young mechanic finally spoke, his voice small. "I told you to watch the carbs," he mumbled, but there was no humor in it. It was a statement of fear. Doc just nodded, unable to form words. He patted Danny on the shoulder, a gesture meant to be reassuring, but his hand was shaking so badly it probably felt like a seizure. He walked past the other pilots, ignoring their questions, their slaps on the back. He went straight to his quarters, a small, drafty room in the farmhouse, and collapsed onto his cot without even taking off his boots. He could still smell the cordite and the sickly sweet scent of burning hydrogen. He could still feel the concussive thump of the rocket's impact. He closed his eyes, and all he saw was fire. The nightmares started that night. They were different from the usual dreams of falling or being chased. They were vivid, sensory horrors. He was back in the balloon's basket, but he was the observer, sipping coffee, looking out at a peaceful morning. Then he'd see his own Newport in the distance, a tiny speck that grew until it fired a rocket that became a sun, consuming him in agonizing heat. He'd wake up gasping, his sheets soaked with sweat, the phantom smell of burning flesh in his nostrils. During the day, he was a ghost around the aerodrome. The weather turned, bringing days of steady, dreary rain that grounded the squadron. The forced inactivity was a torture. He stopped joining the others in the mess. The boisterous talk of dogfights and kills felt like a foreign language. He'd sit alone, staring out at the rain-lashed field, jumping at the sound of a truck backfiring or a door slamming. Major Thorne noticed. He called Doc into his office, a room that still smelled of the French farmer who'd once lived there. "The brass is thrilled, Crow," Thorne said, not unkindly. "That rocket strike was a masterpiece. They want to put you up for a Distinguished Service Cross to go with your Medal of Honor. You're a national asset." Doc just stared at a water stain on the wall, shaped like a dragon. "How many men were on that winch crew, Major?" he asked, his voice flat. Thorne's face hardened. "Doesn't matter. They were the enemy. They were there to kill our boys. You saved countless lives by blinding them." He leaned forward. "This, melancholy, Captain. It's bad for morale. The men look up to you. They need to see the unshakable balloon buster." Doc finally met his eyes. "There's no such thing, sir. He's a myth." The only person he could barely tolerate was Danny. The kid, sensing his hero's fracture, stopped talking about the war. Instead, he talked about home. About Chicago, about his mom's apple pie, about a girl named Mary he hoped to marry. He'd work on the skeletal frame of the new Newport they were building for Doc, and he'd just talk, filling the silence with memories of a normal life. One afternoon, as Danny carefully stitched new linen onto a wing, he said, "You know, my pop. He was at the Second Battle of the Marne. He doesn't talk about it much, but my mom says he came back, quiet, like all the noise had been used up inside him." He looked at Doc, his young eyes old with understanding. "It's okay to be quiet, document." It was the first time anyone had given him permission to not be a hero. Doc felt a lump form in his throat. He just nodded, watching the rain slide down the hangar's canvas walls. Later that day, he was forced to break his isolation. Ace McCullough sought him out, his usual swagger gone, replaced by a grim determination. "Doc," he said, his voice low, "we just got the intelligence briefing. It's Jenkins. He went down yesterday on a patrol behind the Serpent's back. The Baron got him." Lieutenant Jenkins was 19, a kid from Ohio with a photographic memory for engine specs. He'd shared a bottle of wine with Doc just last week. Ace's jaw was tight. "They're saying the Baron. He didn't just shoot him down. He circled, waited for Jenkins to crawl out of the wreckage. Then he strafed him." Ace looked away, his shoulders slumped. "They found his body this morning. It wasn't recognizable. The Baron's sending a message, document. He's saying what happens to anyone who flies with you. A cold, clean fury, different from any emotion he'd felt before, washed through document. The hollowness, the nightmares, the guilt, it was all incinerated in that moment, replaced by a single, focused purpose. This was no longer a duel between knights. This was personal. The Baron had crossed a line from soldier to murderer. He had killed one of Doc's boys. His family. He walked to the operations tent, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. He found Major Thorne studying a map. "I need a new plane," Doc said, his voice like gravel. "Tonight." Thorne looked up, seeing the change in him. The ghost was gone, replaced by something harder, sharper. The new Newport won't be ready for 3 days, Crow. I don't want a Newport, Doc said. His eyes locked on the red marker denoting the German aerodrome near the Serpent's back. I want a SPAD, the fastest one you have, and I want it loaded with incendiary bullets. No more rockets. Understanding dawned on Thorne's face. This was a hunting request. Crow, this is me finishing the job, Doc interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. He killed one of ours. On the ground. This ends now. There was a long silence, broken only by the drumming of rain on the canvas. Thorne finally gave a curt nod. You'll have the SPAD by 0600. But Crow, this is a revenge mission. It's not in the books. You'll be on your own. A grim, humorless smile touched Doc's lips for the first time in days. Sir, he said softly, I've always been on my own. That night, Doc didn't even try to sleep. He sat with Danny in the hangar, the two of them working under the glow of a single hurricane lamp to help the crew prepare the new SPAD-13. It was a brutish, powerful machine, all engine and guns, without the Newport's delicate grace. It was a sledgehammer, and that's exactly what he needed. As the first gray light of dawn began to bleed into the sky, the rain finally stopped. The new plane was ready, its dark green paint still smelling fresh, its twin Vickers machine guns loaded with a full belt of Buckingham incendiary rounds, designed to set balloons and fuel tanks ablaze. Danny handed Doc his leather helmet and goggles. She's a beast, document. She'll shake your teeth out, but she'll climb like a homesick angel. He hesitated, then held out Doc's colorful silk scarf. You forgot this. Doc took it. The silk felt flimsy, ridiculous. A token from a man who no longer existed. He looked at it for a long moment, then tied it around his neck. It wasn't a statement of individuality anymore. It was a flag, a declaration of war. He climbed into the SPAD's cockpit. It felt unfamiliar, hostile. He started the engine, and the whole frame vibrated with a raw, untamed power that was nothing like his gentle petite reign. He looked over at Danny, who gave him a thumbs up, his face a mixture of fear and hope. Doc didn't return the gesture. He simply closed the canopy, released the brakes, and taxied onto the sodden field. He wasn't Silas Crow, the barnstormer. He wasn't even Captain Crow, the balloon buster. He was vengeance, and he was going to deliver it personally. The SPAD was a different animal. It didn't float through the air like the Newport. It muscled its way through, the massive Hispano-Suiza engine roaring a challenge to the sky. There was no finesse to it, only raw, brutal power. Doc felt the vibration in his bones, a constant, angry hum that matched the new feeling in his chest. The hollowness was gone, filled with a cold, heavy certainty. This was a one-way trip. He would find the Baron, or he would die trying. He flew not towards the front lines, but parallel to them, staying deep in Allied territory, using the early morning mist as cover. He was going around the Horn, a wide, sweeping arc that would bring him into German airspace from the north, an approach they wouldn't expect. He wasn't here for balloons. He was here for a single, specific pilot. He climbed, the SPAD eating up the altitude, pushing through 15,000 feet until he was in the thin, freezing air at the roof of the world. Below, the clouds were a solid, fluffy blanket, hiding the war. Up here, it was just him, the sun, and his mission. He checked his compass, his watch, his fuel. Everything was calculated. He was a predator stalking his prey, and he knew exactly where the Baron's lair was. He found what he was looking for an hour later. A break in the clouds revealed the German aerodrome nestled near a small village. It was a mirror image of his own. Hangars, a chateau, and a grassy field. And there, lined up neatly, were the Fokkers. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the engine's roar. He circled high above, a tiny speck invisible from the ground, and he waited. He didn't have to wait long. The morning patrol was preparing to take off. He saw figures moving around the planes. Then, one plane was pulled from a hangar. Even from this height, he could see the splash of blood-red paint. The Baron. Doc's breath fogged in the icy cockpit. This was it. He watched the red Fokker taxi and take off, followed by its two wingmen. They climbed, heading towards the front. They were looking for him. Doc let them go. He waited until they were specks in the distance. Then he began his descent. He wasn't going to fight them over their own airfield. He had a better, more cruel idea. He pushed the SPAD's nose down, the engine screaming in a near-vertical dive. He aimed not for the Baron's flight, but for the aerodrome itself. He was going to smash their home. He streaked out of the high sun, a green bolt of lightning. He saw German mechanics look up, their faces turning to tiny white ovals of surprise. He didn't fire at the hangars or the chateau. He lined up on the line of parked Fokkers. At 500 yards, he squeezed the trigger. The SBAD shuddered as the twin Vickers hammered, tracers streaking down. He walked his fire down the line. He saw fabric tear, wings splinter, and then, glory of horrors, a fuel tank ignited. One of the parked Fokkers blossomed into a fireball, the explosion rocking the field and setting the plane next to it ablaze. He pulled out of the dive just feet above the ground, racing across the field so low his prop wash tore up the grass. He saw men diving for cover. He didn't feel triumph. He felt nothing. It was a chore, a necessary act of violence. He pulled back on the stick, climbing away from the chaos he had created, and turned to face the inevitable. The three Fokkers were already turning, diving back towards him. They had seen the smoke. The two wingmen came at him first, enraged, their attacks wild and uncoordinated. The cold focus that had eluded Doc for weeks was now his entirely. He was a machine. As the first wingman overshot, Doc rolled the heavy SBAD onto its back, pulled through in a split S, and came out right behind him. A short, precise burst of incendiaries. The Fokker's tail erupted into flame. It nosed down and spiraled into the clouds below. The second wingman tried to hook onto Doc's tail. Doc chopped his throttle, letting the faster Fokker surge past him, then slammed the throttle back open and fired. His bullets sawed the Fokker's right wing off. It cartwheeled into nothingness. And then, there was only one. The red Fokker. The Baron had held back, watching, learning Doc's moves in the new plane. Now, they circled each other, slow and wary, two gunfighters in a silent, sky-born arena. There were no tricks left, no sun to hide in, no altitude to gain. It was just the two of them, and their skill. The Baron attacked first, a classic, high-side pass. Doc turned into him, negating the shot. They passed so close Doc saw the Baron's goggled eyes, hard and furious. They turned, twisted, rolled, each trying to get that half-second of advantage. The SBAD was stronger in the dive, but the Fokker could turn inside it. It was a deadly ballet. Doc realized the Baron was hurting him again, subtly forcing him lower, towards the machine gun nests now firing from the aerodrome. Tracers began to zip past. The Baron was using his own home field advantage. It was a brilliant, dirty trick. Doc saw his chance. He pretended to take the bait, letting the Baron force him into a shallow dive towards the flak. The Baron followed, confident. At the last second, Doc did the one thing the Baron wouldn't expect in the heavy SBAD. He kicked the rudder and stood the plane on its wingtip, executing a vicious, turning stall. The SBAD shuddered, nearly falling out of the sky, but it pivoted in a space no one thought possible. For a breathtaking second, the red Fokker filled his windscreen. He saw the surprise in the Baron's posture. He saw the little white crosses on the strut. There were 20 of them. Doc didn't hesitate. He pressed the trigger and held it. A long, sustained stream of fire poured into the cockpit of the red Fokker. The glass shattered. The fabric skin peeled back. The plane, now a ghost of itself, flew on for a moment, then slowly, gracefully, nosed down and began its final, smoking descent into the clouds. Doc didn't watch it fall. He didn't feel the surge of victory he expected. He just felt tired. Impossibly tired. He turned the SBAD west, towards home, towards the boys in the trenches, towards Danny and a new plane waiting in a hangar. The lone wolf had won his duel, but as he flew into the setting sun, the sky around him had never felt emptier. The end.